The judge was already reaching for the gavel. The case was seconds from being dismissed. No drama. No resistance. Then the defender stood up, and the entire courtroom felt it. The courtroom had the energy of something already decided. People weren't leaning forward. They weren't whispering. They weren't waiting for surprises. They were waiting for it to end. A minor case. Low public interest. No cameras. No headlines. Just another file on a judge's desk. The defendant sat quietly beside his defender, hands folded, eyes lowered. He hadn't spoken much all morning. Not because he had nothing to say, but because no one had asked the right questions. The prosecutor had rushed through the details. The judge had listened politely, but not deeply. This wasn't a case that threatened careers. It wasn't one that would be remembered. The judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at the clock. Given the lack of substantial evidence, he said calmly, and the time already spent, his hand moved toward the gavel. The sound hadn't happened yet, but the decision already had. The defender had been quiet all morning. Too quiet. Not inexperienced, just underestimated. He wasn't flashy, didn't interrupt, didn't object for attention. He took notes, careful notes, every word spoken, every word avoided. He watched the prosecutor closely. He watched the judge even closer. Because trials aren't decided only by evidence. They're decided by momentum, and momentum was about to crush his client. The defendant glanced at him, a look that wasn't fear, but acceptance. That look changed something. The defender stood up, slowly, deliberately, not in panic, not in desperation, but with purpose. "Your Honor," the defender said. The judge paused, hands still hovering over the gavel. "Yes," the judge replied, clearly expecting a formality. The defender didn't rush. "Before this case is dismissed," he said calmly, "I'd like to ask one question." The judge sighed softly. "One question," he allowed. The defender nodded and turned toward the prosecutor. "Did you disclose all evidence related to the timeline of the incident?" The prosecutor blinked. "Yes," he answered quickly. "All relevant material." The defender didn't react. He simply reached into his folder and placed one document on the table. "This," the defender said, "is a security log obtained through a delayed request." The judge leaned forward slightly. The prosecutor frowned. "That log was not included," the prosecutor said. "Correct," the defender replied. "It wasn't included because it wasn't requested." Silence settled. The defender continued. "This log shows that the timestamp used to accuse my client does not align with the building's internal access records." The judge's hand slowly retreated from the gavel. "Explain," the judge said. The defender did. Carefully, methodically, without emotion. The timeline cracked. A 5-minute discrepancy. Small to the careless. Fatal to the truth. The courtroom shifted. People leaned forward now. The prosecutor adjusted his tie. The judge stopped looking at the clock. "What are you suggesting?" the judge asked. "I'm suggesting," the defender said calmly, "that my client could not have been present at the time alleged." The defendant lifted his head for the first time. The prosecutor objected. The judge overruled. The defender continued. "One overlooked detail," he said, "doesn't just weaken a case. It exposes its foundation." The judge stared at the document, then at the prosecutor, then back at the defender. The defender took a breath. "I waited," he said, "because this case was never about volume. It was about timing." The judge said nothing. The prosecution relied on the assumption that this case was too small to be challenged thoroughly. The defender continued. That it would be dismissed quietly. The courtroom was silent, and they were almost right. The judge's expression hardened. The judge leaned back. "This court does not dismiss cases based on assumptions," he said slowly. The prosecutor swallowed. The defender sat down, but the damage was done. The case was alive, and no one in the room could pretend otherwise. The judge turned to the defendant. "Is there anything you'd like to add?" The defendant stood, just like his defender had. "Yes," he said quietly. "I trusted the silence." The courtroom felt that, because silence had just rewritten everything. Cases aren't lost because of guilt. They're lost because of neglect. Judges don't dismiss truth. They dismiss noise. And defenders who wait aren't weak. They're precise. The judge set the gavel down. "This case," he said firmly, "will proceed." The sound echoed. not of dismissal, but of accountability. Never mistake quiet preparation for surrender. Never confuse patience with fear, because sometimes the most powerful moment in a courtroom is not when someone speaks loudly, but when the right person stands up at the exact right time.